A top general in charge of Russia's nuclear, biological, and chemical defense forces was killed in an explosion in Moscow.
Russian convoys spotted traveling in Syria in what military analysts and intelligence suggest could be a large-scale withdrawal. Paris dispatches military aircraft carrying aid from Reunion Island to nearby Mayotte to help victims of Cyclone Cheeto. A shooting at a school in Madison in the U.S. state of Wisconsin has killed a teacher and a student and injured 6 others.
Igor Kirillov, a top general in charge of Russia's nuclear, biological, and chemical defense forces, was killed in an explosion in Moscow. An explosive device was planted in a scooter near a residential apartment block, according to Russia's investigative committee. Kirillov was found dead alongside his assistant outside the building. Ukraine's security service was reportedly behind his death, a source in the agency told local media. It said it executed a special operation in Moscow on a legitimate target. A day before his death, Ukraine's security forces charged Kirillov with the use of banned chemical weapons in Russia's ongoing war in Ukraine. He was under sanctions from several countries, including the UK and Canada, for his role in Ukraine.
A large convoy of Russian military vehicles was seen withdrawing from Syria's western city of Latakia. They were headed towards the nearby city of Tartus, where the Kremlin operates a naval base. It's the third time in the span of a week that Moscow has engaged in the vacating, shifting, or movement of its military assets in the country. This has prompted claims of a potential Russian withdrawal just 1 week after their longtime ally, President Bashar al-Assad, was ousted. And the spokesman for the new transitional government in Syria, Ubaida Arnaout, has declared the country's new position.
أرى وأظن أن الدولة أو يعني روسيا أن تعيد النظر والتفكير بوجودها على التراب السوري، وكذلك تعيد النظر في المصالح، كانت مصالحهم مرتبطة بنظام الأسد المجرم.
The call for Russia's withdrawal from Syria could go a long way towards building bridges with the West. The EU announced that it had taken the first step towards making contact with the HTS since their dramatic overthrowing of Assad, and ensuring a Syrian future without Russia is high on the bloc's agenda.
It should be a condition for the new leadership that they also get rid of the Russian influence there, because it is a base where they also conduct their activities towards Africa and the southern neighbors. So this is definitely of the worry of European security as well.
The HTS say they plan to lay the foundation for a Syrian future that is built on unity and justice. But the group's history, marred with terrorist activities and accusations of human rights abuses, is leading many Western countries to tread with caution.
Russian President Vladimir Putin accused NATO nations of pushing Russia into its red lines. In his annual meeting with defense officials, the Russian president implied the figurative point of no return may be reached by escalating the conflict in Ukraine.
США продолжают накачивать фактически нелегитимный правящий режим в Киеве оружием и деньгами. Отправляют наемников и военных советников, и тем самым поощряют дальнейшую эскалацию конфликта. Доводят нас до красной черты, через которую мы отступать уже не можем. Начинаем отвечать, тут же пугают свое население, тогда еще в давние времена советской, сейчас российской угрозы.
Putin also voiced his concerns over the developments made by the United States regarding medium and shorter range missiles. He added that if the US were to cross this line, Moscow would lift its voluntary restrictions. The Russian president also applauded Russian forces for capturing 189 settlements this past year. Hungary and Slovakia vetoed a proposal to impose EU sanctions on Georgian officials involved in the repression of pro-European demonstrations. The sanctions were put forward by High Representative Kaja Kallas during a meeting of foreign affairs ministers in Brussels. Kallas told reporters that Georgia is currently not going in the right direction where candidate countries should be. Thousands of Georgians have been protesting in response to the Georgian government's decision to halt EU accession talks. But the suppression of the pro-EU demonstrations led to chaotic clashes in the streets and resulted in multiple arrests and numerous reports of injuries. Hungary, who is a close ally to the Georgian ruling party, had announced before the gathering that they would block any restrictive measures. Slovakia's Prime Minister Robert Fico often aligns with Hungary's Viktor Orban on foreign policy and was also expected to say no. German Chancellor Olaf Scholz has lost a no-confidence vote in Parliament. It's paved the way for national snap elections, with polls indicating Germany could be headed for a right-wing shift in power.
Gerade wurde es entschieden. Der Deutsche Bundestag hat dem Bundeskanzler Olaf Scholz mit 394 Stimmen das Vertrauen entzogen. Olaf Scholz hat damit die Vertrauensfrage verloren. Bundespräsident Frank-Walter Steinmeier hat nun 21 Tage Zeit, um den Bundestag aufzulösen und damit Neuwahlen den Weg freizumachen. Schon während der Aussprache im Bundestag herrscht Wahlkampfstimmung. Scholz und Wirtschaftsminister Robert Habeck verweisen auf Erfolge der Ampelkoalition. Oppositionsführer Friedrich Merz greift Scholz direkt an und verteidigt CDU-Wahlversprechen. Den Parteien bleibt wenig Zeit, um die Wählerinnen und Wähler von sich zu überzeugen. In knapp 2 Monaten, am 23. Februar, sind Neuwahlen. Dieser kurze Wahlkampf ist besonders hart für die Kleinparteien. Sie müssen Zehntausende Unterschriften sammeln, um überhaupt bei der Bundestagswahl antreten zu dürfen. Viele sind sich nicht sicher, ob sie das schaffen werden. Am 23. Februar werden die Wählerinnen und Wähler deswegen voraussichtlich eine kleinere Auswahl haben. Anne-Frieda Müller in Berlin für Euronews.
The no-confidence vote is only the 6th in the country's post-war history.
Finland is accelerating preparation for all potential conflicts, nuclear, hybrid war or even a full-scale invasion. It has a 1,300-kilometre border with Russia, although this has been closed for over a year after Russia sent over 1,000 migrants there to destabilise the country. Since then, Finland has been dealing with other warfare, such as the tampering of undersea cables, disinformation and the presence of so-called Russian shadow oil fleets which illegally transport Russian oil, contravening Western sanctions.
The Finnish border guard has been always an organization, a readiness organization, which has built its capabilities to operate in a situation like today. But of course, it is also true that, for example, the phenomenon of shadow fleet, phenomenon of GPS disturbance, and illegal immigration in the eastern borders are something that we have seen only in last years. We have seen, let's say, cable cuts, cable breakdown points, which are under criminal investigation. As I mentioned before, we also see a threat for an environmental accident in the Gulf of Finland, and one part of this is GPS disturbance, which can be seen especially in the eastern parts of Gulf of Finland.
Conscripts, which have long been part of Finland's overall security policy, are now training with the possibility that they could be defending the whole of Europe since the country joined NATO. Finland has been preparing for any war for several decades. The invasion by Russia in 1939 is something that Finns are constantly reminded of. And the key principle of this comprehensive security and defence strategy is deterrence. To deter any potential invader, in particular Russia, that this country is prepared, its society as a whole and military are well trained.
It's not aimed only towards Finland or the neighboring countries, but Russia is trying to destabilize the whole of Europe. So the whole Europe has to take this hybrid war seriously. And because Russia cannot pressure us by threatening in the way of conventional war, because we are all members of NATO, the hybrid war is the mean they use to threaten us.
Helsinki says it's now open to new EU defence spending, including defence bonds. The government says investing in European security fits in with the country's overall security strategy. Shona Murray, Euronews, Helsinki.
A military aircraft has left the French island of Réunion to deliver tons of crucial aid to victims of Cyclone Chido in nearby Mayotte. Paris is ramping up its efforts to help the Indian Ocean island after it was hit by the worst storm in 90 years. Chido left little without damage as it plowed through the densely populated archipelago of about 300,000 people on Saturday. Roofs were ripped off of homes, roads were destroyed, and electric and telecom grids sustained heavy damage. Hundreds are already feared dead, and more than 1,000 are still missing. The official death toll currently stands at 14. Rescue operations are still ongoing, with some 800 first responders expected to arrive within days to intensify the efforts. French President Emmanuel Macron is set to visit the island in the coming days to offer his support to the French Overseas Department. In an emergency meeting, Macron said he will ensure all emergency measures are mobilized to help the inhabitants of Mayotte. A shooting at a Christian school in the U.S. state of Wisconsin has killed a teacher and a student. The shooter was also killed after sustaining a self-inflicted gunshot wound. The Madison Police Department have identified 15-year-old Natalie Rupnow, who went by the name Samantha, as the shooter. 5 other students and a teacher also sustained injuries. 2 of the students are in critical condition. The Madison PD chief, Sean Barnes, says the shooter's parents were taken in for questioning and are fully cooperating with the officers. Their home is also being searched as detectives look to identify a motive behind the attack.
Euronews. The news